All right, thank you. And hello, I'm Demian Katz, Director of Library Technology at Villanova University's Falvey Library. And I'm here to talk about our road to Fedora 6. We were longtime Fedora 3 users. I think we were one of the several organizations that had large Fedora 3 repositories that we didn't really feel comfortable migrating into Fedora 4 or 5 due to some conceptual differences and concerns about mode shape, among other things. But at last, Fedora 6 is here. It meets all our needs. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to tell you about where we were, where we ended up, and how we got there. So I'll start with a little bit of background about our digital library. You can find it online at digital.library.villanova.edu, where it has lived for close to 15 years now. And at this point, it contains about 50,000 digitized items from our own collections and from the collections of various partner institutions. It mostly consists of book-like objects. So, TIFF images that when bundled together make up a larger work. The 50,000 count is the conceptual items. There are actually about 800,000 objects in the Fedora sense. And in addition to the books, we have a little bit of audio, a little bit of video, some PDF documents, and etc. My favorite part of the collection, which you probably already know if you've met me before, is the dime novels. And so I will be illustrating this talk with dime novel covers just to amuse and distract you. So let's start by talking about our old infrastructure. As I've already mentioned, we had Fedora 3. We also used ViewFind version 2.4 as our public front end into the collections. We used good old gsearch to index the data from Fedora into ViewFind Solr Index. We had something called ViewDL, which is an open source project we developed in-house, built on the Orbion Xforms platform, which literally nobody else ever used. The code's still out there, still open source. We were the only user. We also had something called ViewDL Prep, which was a Rails app, again, which we open sourced and no one else used for doing content ingest. And we used Cantaloupe as our IIIF image server that helped to glue all the pieces together. There are some obvious problems with this architecture. One being, of course, that Fedora 3 was long past end of life. Another being that gsearch was built in such a way that you had to use a specific version of Solr with it. It wasn't being updated anymore, and this had the knock-on effect of making it impossible for us to upgrade our ViewFind instance. Then there was Orbion Xforms, and some people might like to program using declarative XML documents, but I've never met anyone who did. So that wasn't really working out incredibly well for us. And again, we had a Rails app because I wrote that app to learn Rails, but nobody on my team or in our institution really uses it. So it was just another technology to support that we didn't really need. So none of those things were great. We also, though, did have some things we wanted to keep. We're happy with ViewFind. It's our own open source project. We use it. It has a large community. It works for us. We just wanted to be able to upgrade it past version 2.4, where we were stuck for years. We were really happy with having infrastructure built around the IIIF standard and using Cantaloupe as our image server. We didn't really feel the need to change our conceptual models of how objects were represented in our repository. We definitely didn't want to change any of our URLs if we could help it, because we're widely linked, especially in terms of using IIIF manifests and external sites, etc. And obviously, we didn't want to lose any of our data because we've spent, as I say, about 15 years accumulating all of it. And software might need updating. Data is great. So to summarize all of the goals of our migration project, we wanted to get to the latest versions of both Fedora and ViewFind. We wanted to get rid of gsearch and replace it with the Camel toolbox, which serves much the same role. We wanted to merge our two old or creaky open source project into a new rewritten one that maybe somebody else might want to use, but definitely that we would want to use. And we didn't want to change anything else because that is more than enough change already. So with all that, we came up with an easy 5-step plan. Step one, we migrated a representative subset of our data. Migration takes a lot of time. We just wanted to see how our Fedora 3 data would look in Fedora 6. So we picked a few collections with representative types of data. We did a selective migration that only took a day or two, and then we had a Fedora 6 that we could play with. So step two, now that we had Fedora 6 running with real data in it, even though just a small subset, we were then able to begin updating our software to work with it. So, the viewfind updates were relatively minor, just changing the way we retrieved some things directly from Fedora. The bigger part was rebuilding the entire administration and indexing platform, but we did that. And we did that in about a year's time so that by the next summer, we could do a full test migration of all of our data into Fedora 6 and see how it played with all of the newly built and upgraded software we had developed. And this is what I did on my 2022 summer vacation, because that's just how the timeline landed. But it was quite successful. We then were able to spend the rest of 2022 making adjustments to the software based on the migration tests, seeing how things operated at scale, filling in missing features, and so forth, which then let us do our full production migration so that we could launch in the new year. So that's how I spent my Christmas vacation too. But it was all totally worth it because we ended up with a working platform. So where exactly did we land? Fedora 6, we were able to upgrade Viewfind to version 8.1. We've subsequently released Viewfind 9, so we'll have to upgrade that again, but that will be a much smaller project. We're using the Camel toolbox, which works well. We released our ViewDL 2.0, and we didn't change a thing in Cantaloupe except one configuration file. So we managed to modernize our platform without changing absolutely everything, just almost absolutely everything. So what are some lessons we learned during this process? One, the Fedora community is great. You've already heard a lot about the Fedora community. I will confirm it is all true. People are friendly and helpful and responsive and make themselves available and collaborate. And that was all hugely valuable to us getting what we needed from the software. Related to that, the migration tools really work. We had a huge amount of work to do, and it was a very time-consuming process, but at no point were the migration tools an obstacle to our work. They migrated the data, and the migrated data was the way it was supposed to be, with a couple of tiny things that we discovered during our test run that were easily fixed. Fedora 3 concepts have comfortable equivalents in Fedora 6. One of the reasons, as I mentioned, that we didn't upgrade Fedora sooner is that it was a little bit hard to see how Fedora 3's models could map to Fedora 4 or 5, but it makes sense now. It all works. We're happy. I'm still probably going to use Fedora 3 terminology when I shouldn't, but forgive me, please. And related to what I said earlier about the migration tools, doing a dry run migration is absolutely worth the time. You really should, well in advance of your production migration, obtain the resources to do a full migration and do it. This will tell you how much time and space you're actually really going to need. It's going to reveal any problems in your data that you perhaps don't know about. And while a representative sample migration is a great way to get started, you should really do the whole thing before you commit to be sure that there's nothing lurking, because there's always something lurking in data. That's what data is for, to accumulate lurking issues. And of course, the final lesson learned is that with the right team, you can really build a lot of software in a year. I'm kind of amazed at what we were able to accomplish. And just to acknowledge everyone, this project started as a collaboration mainly between our developer, Jeff Scholl, and me. Jeff then left the team for another position. We were very fortunate to hire a very talented grad assistant named Adrian Kaganen, who really took the reins and got a lot of the development work done in collaboration with myself and with Chris Hallberg, another developer on our team. But really, it was just 4 people and 1 year completely rebuilding everything. And we ended up with working software at the end. So what exactly did we build? As Aaron mentioned, we contributed the HTTP message forwarding service to the Camel toolbox. And if you're not already familiar with the Camel toolbox, this is a set of tools that listen to messages from Fedora and then take actions to export data to other systems. And it comes with built-in tools for doing Solr indexing or populating a triple store, et cetera. But what we really wanted was just a generic HTTP messaging system that would forward the messages out of Fedora to an arbitrary HTTP endpoint so that we could build a listener that would do the custom indexing that we needed for our viewfind instance. So we were able to build that, and it's been working great for us. We also, as I said, built ViewDL 2.0. This is an all JavaScript application. It's got an express.js backend with a React front end, and it does all of the ingest and administration work for our repository. We chose to build it in JavaScript due to the skill set of our team. We had a lot of JavaScript developers. And I have to say, even though it wasn't necessarily my first personal choice, I've been really impressed with how well the ecosystem provides the libraries we need to meet our needs. And that code is all open source and available now on GitHub if anybody wants to check it out. It is, of course, currently very tailored to Villanova's needs, but if you have similar needs or are interested in collaborating, please do reach out. I'd be happy to build a community around this if there's interest. And I think it has strong potential if you're interested in greenfield repository development, probably less so if you're already set in your ways and your data models. We also built a viewfind module to integrate with the ViewDL content. This provides the public front-end interface that you can see at our public digital library site. It incorporates the universal viewer for content viewing. And we do plan to make this available as open source. It still needs a little bit more polish. I can certainly expedite that work if anybody wants to see it, but my impression at the moment is it's mostly being used internally, so I'm not in a huge hurry. But again, if this intrigues you at all, please reach out. And to just show a little bit more of our system, I have a few screenshots and can talk a little bit about our workflows. I won't go into excruciating depth though. So ViewDL has both an ingest module and an administration module. The ingest module works by just uploading sets of files to folders on a file server. It looks in those folders and then presents an interface where you can do QC and pagination. So this first screen shows, one of our queues. This is sort of in a state where some things have been processed and are waiting to be ingested. Others still need to be paginated. When you click on one of these jobs, you end up on a screen that looks something like this, where you see all the lists of pages within the job. You can zoom in on individual pages, and you have sort of a palette of pagination controls that you can use to number the pages and add labels. And it has a fair amount of magic built in so that it tries to predict what the next label should be based on what the previous labels are. So you can tend to paginate something with relatively few clicks. Again, quite tailored to our local practices, but probably could be generalized. Once you've done this pagination and the nightly ingest process has loaded everything into Fedora, then you can go to the administration view, which shows all the contents of Fedora in a tree structure because we organize our collections as a hierarchical tree. You can then drill down through the tree, take some actions on individual objects, and anything that you click on will take you to an object editor that looks something like this, where you can populate different data fields within the repository. And again, as I say, we we changed our software, we didn't change our model. So this is still very much built around the Fedora 3 kind of data streams approach to things. And that works for us, so we're happy. And each of these individual data streams has its own set of editing controls, again, tailored to our need, but all built in React and relatively easy to change. Just as an example, this is what our Dublin core editor looks like. It has controls for cloning data from other objects and for adding or modifying fields. And it has things like tiny MCE built in for HTML description editing, etc. So that is my quick introduction. There's now tons of time for questions, or I could do more of a live demo if there are things in our system people would like to see more of. Or if you want to talk to me later, there's my email address, which I can also put into the chat. So if you think of something or you want to reach out, just let me know. I'm really excited about how well Fedora 6 is working for us and about the tools we've built. I'm, as I say, very happy to share them, though I also understand that there are a lot of ways of doing this, and maybe ours is just for us, but I think it has potential. So I'm just putting in the chat the digital library website and my email address, except that I'm sending those things to Aaron instead of to everyone. Let's try that again. All right, there's my email address. And there is the digital library website, so you can look at our cool stuff. All right, thank you, everyone. Let me know if you have a question.
So yeah, questions we can take in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand or just unmute. We're not too many, so I think we could probably just field them that way.
Okay, I didn't want to talk over anybody, but nobody's talking, so I'm going to ask a question. Can you, oh, sorry, I'm going to let Oliver go.
No, talk first. That's okay.
I just wanted to ask if you could, Damian, if you could speak a little bit about how your ingest process into Fedora is kind of specifically working. I don't think I really understand, but as we're looking to migrate and build maybe a better, more robust ingest process, yours looked very interesting to me, especially with that pagination viewer and what have you. Like, I don't understand the steps of when you put files up, and then, yeah, if you just kind of go over that again, sorry.
Sure. So here, we'll do this in the most exciting way possible. Let's see if is my screen still being shared? Are you seeing what I'm looking at right now? All right, so let's see if anything new has been uploaded. So the way this works is we have a scan lab where all our digitization takes place, and we have a file server which is set up with SFTP access from the scan lab. So students are assigned work to scan, they digitize stuff, they end up with a set of TIFF files, which they then upload into a folder on the file server. So each folder on the file server maps to a category in our editing interface, and then each folder in the category folder is a job. So like right now we have some new dime novels that have been worked on. So they show up here, and each of these is just a folder of TIFFs. This one has been uploaded so recently that derivative images haven't been generated yet. So I can just click this button and we can magically watch as it builds all our derivative JPEGs for us. But while that's building, I can also look at this one that already has derivatives. And so, this is that pagination interface I was talking about. And then it just gives me the ability to label all the TIFF images that were sent up. So, I could say this is the front cover, this is the inside front cover, this is page 1, but it doesn't have a number printed on it. This is page 2, and then it just magically will number the rest. And of course, for due diligence, I would look at every single one of these scans, make sure there are no flakes of paper overlaying text or whatever. But then when I'm done with all that, I hit save and publish. And then it goes into this state where it says queued for ingestion, cannot be edited, ingest now. And what has happened is that the VDL software has saved all of my pagination data into a JSON document which has a flag in it saying this has been published. Then we have a cron job that runs every night that iterates through this folder structure looking for published JSON documents, and that kicks off an ingest job that just pushes all the data into Fedora, builds all the models. It's all just written in JavaScript code. And while that's happening, you can actually, it sort of tails the log into this screen, so you can actually watch what it's doing as it creates objects and uploads data streams and so forth. And that's actually all managed through bullmq, which is a message queue system for JavaScript. So you can also, see what's going on by using this arena thing, which is built into VueDL, but is a third-party application. And this actually shows the work that's currently happening. So like right now, we're running some jobs to add PDF documents to older items in the repository that were added before we had automatic PDF generation. We're currently working through a backlog, so we just queue up some of these every day. But this system then lets us just see what's going on. And if anything fails during an ingest, it'll drop into the failed queue with an error message, and then you can investigate, oh, this TIFF was corrupted, or there was a network error that caused the Fedora upload to fail, or whatever. And then you can take corrective action from there.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm Oliver. I have a question that is not very specific to your repository, but I'm curious about. First, I would like to say I'm quite glad to hear that your migration went that well. But I would like to know, learning a little bit even more on the differences of Fedora 3, 4, 5, and 6, and what made you hesitating to migrate to Fedora as long as Fedora 4 was out? I think the differences between 4 and 6 are much less than between 3 and 4. So I'm curious about that.
The biggest concern we had was related to mode shape, because we heard some horror stories early in Fedora 4 days of people just losing everything because their database got corrupted. So we sort of made it a requirement that we wanted to understand how the files were mapped on disk so that we could find things and roll back if something went wrong. And it was just more mystery than we were comfortable with, given that we're using Fedora as our primary preservation platform.
Yeah, see, I have these problems as well, not that hard as you had, but there had to be some investigation sometimes where the data are.
Right. So OCFL was
Yeah.
just the thing we were looking for.
Okay, yeah, that's understandable.
It looks like we still have 5 or 6 minutes left if anyone has more questions, but otherwise I'm happy to pass the mic to whoever is next. Or do we get to have a break early? That's going to demotivate anyone from asking questions.
We'll leave it open for another few minutes to see if there are any other questions. Oh, yeah, there is one. Perfect. Is it Peter? Oh, you might be muted still. Sorry.
Hello, I'm Petr Pitelka. I'm from Czech Republic, and my question is regarding how do you handle backing up of the Fedora repository? Because I'm quite curious, because you are ingesting a lot of packages inside the repository. So how do you schedule the backing up of the new packages which were stored in a repository?
So our backup is handled by our university IT department, and they don't really like us because it is about 50 terabytes that they have to back up. But they do regular full backups and incremental backups, and we have in the past had to restore those backups and have been able to do it successfully. So unfortunately, I can't tell you the exact technical details of this because it's sort of magical and handled in another department of the university. but I can say that I don't think that it's going to remain the same in the long term, because we are really pushing it up against the limits of what is practical with the tools that they're using. So we're currently doing an investigation of switching all of our storage to Amazon S3 using a file gateway appliance, and then doing backup by having multiple replicas of the S3 data in separate regions and doing frequent fixity checking to detect problems. And so we've done a proof of concept of that looks promising, but we haven't yet done all the work of scheduling an official update or planning the work in detail. But I could certainly share some more information on that with anyone who's interested.
Okay, thanks a lot. Because what I'm afraid about using Fedora repository in Czech archives is that exactly as you said, if you leave the backing up process on an IT department, then they do not understand the granularity of the data. They are not able to distinguish at the time when we are starting to store the package, when it's a package completely stored inside the repository, because they are backing up at some random time, something what doesn't have to be in consistent state. So thank you for your answer. I understand that you currently didn't solve this problem. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if there's anybody else in the room that had anything to contribute maybe to Peter's question about how backups are handled at your institution. I don't know if anybody's willing to share or has a different situation.
Well, for us, it's basically the same as for Demian. We have another department within the department taking care of all the backups, and we also have huge backups, and the same with us. They don't like us. But there should be a strategy to back up the data every day or so, and can keep the backups for several months. Yeah.
In our case here in Munich, we have a very similar situation. The colleagues from the infrastructure team make regular backups, and I think the backups are also synchronized, like an offsite backup every month, I think. Yeah, currently it isn't that huge a problem. It's not that many data or lots of terabytes on disk, so they still like us.
Our situation's similar again. Our operations team will take regular daily and incrementals using the VMware's backup solution, which I cannot remember off the top of my name what the product's called. But also our master files, again, much like Damian's, they're all TIFF files, outputs from digitization projects, that sort of thing. They live external to Fedora in a tape archival system, and we send tapes both next door to our partner institution, the University of Wales, Aberystwyth, but we also send them then across the country as well. So we've got, I think, a 3 or 4 physical copy backup on tape, plus the VMware of the operational Fedora stack machines on a nightly basis.
Thank you for your answer. May I just, I would like to ask, you said that you are making the backup on the tapes, but how do you know on which tape which package is stored? Or you don't know it?
So there is a manifest that is stored within the metadata of the tape archive system. It's a proprietary system. It does present itself with an S3 API, although it's not true Amazon S3. It's close to it. They supply their own tools. I believe that it's a Black Pearl product. So that there's a database that can be what's the word? Queried to find the exact locations of the files within the actual tape archive, but they are just effectively S3 or HTTP URLs of the files, and those URLs are what we store in Fedora. So as we migrate towards 6, we don't currently have a way to do the fixity checking, which we would like to be doing from within Fedora, the tape archive software does provide its own fixed checking, and we're reliant on that to do its job at the moment. But we'd like to also tie that in with Fedora. So that's something that we're looking at as a possible enhancement in the future to allow Fedora's built-in fixed checking to work with external systems. All
right, thank you. I just want to take a moment to thank Demian for his presentation, thank Dan and Jared for presenting earlier, and for the questions. There's some conversation related in chat there if you wanted to. As we roll into the break, I'll just draw your attention to the Zoom chat. We are going to break now though for 15 minutes. So